Okay, so we're going to start with some pretty hard-hitting questions here. Father Allan, do you put on your left shoe first or your right shoe?
I actually put on my right shoe first, even though I'm left-handed. I put my right shoe on first, and I use a shoe horn. Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any other shoehorn users in the crowd? Okay. Father Allan, tell us about your family. Tell us about where you grew up. Yeah.
So I was born actually in Montreal. So that one of the questions that was posed earlier is actually true. I was born December 11, 1966. So tick, 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 do the math, okay? I'll be 59 next month. 59. It was like when I was a kid, people who were 50 were like ancient, right? I was like, it's not so bad after all. I think so. I'll be 59 next month. I was born in Montreal, and my family was part of what we call the English Exodus in 1967. We left there and moved to Glengarry County, St. Raphael's, little village, parish of St. Raphael's, where my father had a family connection. My mother is originally from St. Andrews, which is just north of Cornwall. So there was that connection to there. So they wanted to settle there, closer to their own families. And shortly after we arrived there, my second brother was born. And I have, as I said earlier, I have 4 brothers and 1 sister. And the interesting thing about my family, I think may have heard this before, that I'm the priest in the family. And one of my brothers, now retired, but he was a funeral director. And another of my brothers, still active, is an OPP officer. So in my family, we have a priest, a cop, and an undertaker. So we're going to meet one of us eventually, right? So he met me. So that's kind of like the MacDonald family joke, you know. So growing up on a farm, we had a hobby farm, cows, horses, pigs, chickens, etc. My parents wanted to instill in us some discipline and a work ethic, which they did, and they certainly also instilled in each of us the importance of the faith and the value of being of service to others. And so looking for opportunities to be of service to others. I'm grateful now, in hindsight, of course, when you're a kid, it's not always that easy, but in hindsight, realizing that my parents instilled very strong ethics of charity and love and faith. Little parish of St. Raphael's, you know, growing up at home, we had the school, we had the parish, we had our families, had cousins and aunts and uncles nearby. You know, we had a great old time. That was very simple. You know, back then, we didn't know it was simple. We just thought that was just life, right? So, you know, party lines, you know, and growing up on the farm. And I went to school with the same people from grade kindergarten to grade 13, right? And we just kind of hung out in groups. There was never this kind of like exclusive friendships or whatnot going on. No cell phones, that's for sure, right? Internet, what was that, right? So we actually read, right? We talked to each other, you know, and had hobbies. We fought like a lot, right? It's amazing. Well, we all survived, you know, but we did, right? And going to school together, and it was a wonderful life. It was just the family, the faith, everything was very important. You know, we all went to church on Sunday morning. You know, the Church of St. Raphael's, you know, the new church that was built there after the fire. You know, one door in, one door out. And Father Gary Ostler was our pastor at the time. You know, he used to stand there and welcome us. And I think, you know, a lot of things that I try to do even now as a priest, I learned when I was a kid. Like that attention to others, you know, not taking oneself too seriously, taking God seriously, because I have my brothers and my sister will very succinctly, politely remind me, like, okay, calm down there, you know, kind of thing. Like, we remember you when you were just a little kid, you know, so no need to be preaching to us, you know, kind of thing. You know, so my father is deceased, and my mother is still alive. She lives in Cornwall now, so I get to meet and visit with her often. I have one brother, he lives in California. And the rest of us, I live here in Ottawa, but the rest of the siblings all live close by. It's interesting, when we were younger, we all wanted to go far away, right? The geographical solution, I got to get out of here, right? Kind of. Then we get older, we all want to go home again, right? So very, very interesting, beautiful family dynamic. We just We just like hanging out with each other, and we're there, and we're real, we're honest, and that's it. So that's basically the MacDonald family from St. Raffles, yeah.
Right on. I was going to ask you how often you see your family, but it sounds like you see them quite often.
Often enough, yeah. I mean, even though Ottawa's only an hour and a half away, but still it can be a bit of a distance. But more so, my schedule is not, as conducive to getting home as often as I would like to. But what did Jesus say in the gospel? He who leaves mother, father, brother, sister, right, inherits the kingdom of God and 10 times over. So that's what I signed up for. So I've been away from home actually since I was 18. I went to St. Francis Xavier University in Nova Scotia. So, I've actually lived away from home longer than I lived at home at this point, because we're talking 40 years now. 40 years. It's crazy.
Tell us about how you became a priest. Share a little bit of your vocation story with us.
So, again, growing up at home, St. Raffles Parish, and I received the sacrament of confirmation in grade 8. So I was, 12 or 13 years of age. And our bishop at the time, he's deceased now, Bishop Eugene Larocque, was, some people remember him, yeah. So quite a legend, very, very tall man, right? And put the mitre on, he's like 7 feet high, right? And he had a tradition at confirmation to invite the confirmand in singular, and my siblings and my parents to gather around me. And on that particular evening, after he administered the sacrament of confirmation, he asked me, point blank, right there, do you ever think about being a priest, right? I'm like, I'm like grade 8, right? And I'm looking up at this guy, and I'm like, no. Well, he said, if it's God's will, he'll speak to your heart, and I'll pray for that. Okie dokie. Back to my seat, right? But that, in hindsight, that was the night the seed of my vocation was sown in my heart. And even now, I remember if we don't sow a seed, like, God has nothing to water, right? So that seed was sown in my heart, although received, kind of reluctantly or half-heartedly. But I'm 12 or 13 years old. We're like, what else am I going to say? Kind of point blank kind of thing, And so, but that question never left me. Went off to high school, Glengarry District High School in Alexandria. I'm old school. We had grade 13, right? 5 years, right? I continued to serve Mass. My 4 brothers and myself, altar boys at the parish, and then the question was still bouncing around in my mind, right? And again, we learn these things when we get older, right? We don't always know it at the time, right? But in hindsight, right, I was trying to employ a geographical solution, right? I got to get out of here, right? I think so. My guidance counselor said, well, there's this nice Catholic university in Antigonish, Nova Scotia, St. Francis Xavier University. You should go there. I went there. Good, let's go. So my father took me on the train, dropped me off. There was no come and see. There was no, kind of check this out kind of thing. What are my options kind of thing? What do you offer me kind of thing? What are you going to give me, right? I just went and studied in university, undergraduate degree, with the intention of being a lawyer. But the question, have you ever thought about being a priest, just never left me. Would always be bouncing around, right? And for me, the kind of the highlight, or the kind of the most, what would you say, kind of the time when the question was most pronounced in my mind, when I was at Mass, right? And if there was a concelebrated Mass, like 2 or 3 or 4 priests, and when they sang the doxology, right, through him, with him, in him, was like this stab in the heart, right? You ever think about being a priest? Go away. No, I'm not thinking about that, right? So I managed to avoid the chaplain on campus, until my last year, because they always be sponsoring these retreats, right? These vocational retreats and discernment retreats and everything. And ironically, I end up being a university chaplain many years later, right? And guys avoiding me, right? So, but anyway, so this is going on, right? And so I went on this retreat my last year. I had already written my law school admission tests. I was going to start the whole process of, furthering that process to apply to different schools. Went on the retreat. Obviously, you know how the story ends, right? But I didn't know how the story ends, right? And I went on this retreat, and the chaplain, God bless him, Father Gary McPherson, he said, just go in the chapel and just say, Lord, if this is what you want me to do, just give me the grace, give me the courage to do it. So in a way, that was kind of, even before I met Father Bob Bedard, even before I knew the whole concept of giving God permission, which is what I did, not using that same language, but that's what I did that particular night. And it was made clear to me by the Lord, the sense in my heart is, well, that seed was sown that many years ago. This is what I'm inviting you to do. I'm not going to love you less. I'm not going to love you more. But this is what I'm inviting you to do. So I communicated that to Father McPherson, and he said, well, what do you think the next right thing is to do? Now, I grew up again, St. Raphael's, Diocese of Alexandria, Cornwall, which is now part of the Archdiocese of Ottawa, Cornwall. And I thought I should call the bishop. Same guy. Bishop Eugene LaRocque, same guy who asked me the question 9 years earlier, right? And I call him up, and I say, hi, Bishop, my name is Allan MacDonald. And he said to me, oh, I know who you are. I've been praying for you for a long time. I'm like, well, okay, where do I sign? Right? Just what, the discernment's over, right? Kind of thing, It's over, right? And he asked me to go to St. Peter's Seminary in London, Ontario, where I was for 5 years. And again, I just, okay, this is what you're asking me to do. I'll do it. There was no come and see retreat. There was no discernment. There was no, what are you offering me? What are you offering me? What's the, what are you gonna, no kind of signing bonus, nothing. just gonna go, right? And I loved it. I was there 5 years. I loved it. There were 95 of us in the house. And you hear 95 men singing Salve Regina in 4-part harmony, like you sit up straight, right? But I didn't know very much. I remember my first day in class thinking to myself, I think there's 10 commandments. I think there's 10. Yeah, there's 10. I hope no one asked me a question, kind of thing. I'm not too sure. But there I was, right? When the Lord used that generosity, that limited experience, and what the Lord just uses whatever we offer Him, right? I didn't go to the seminary day one thinking, okay, I got this all figured out now. Like, give me the advanced course and get this done, right? There were some rough days in seminary. There's a lot of good days in the seminary, but we just call that life now, right? I know that now. As I get older, it's called life, right? Good days and bad days, but. So, in essence, that's the answer to my vocation story. Now, there's more to it because I discerned later to join the Companions of the Cross, but the seed was sown in my heart on that particular night, and the Lord in His grace, that seed grew, and the Lord put important people in my life along the way, and I just had the willingness to do it, just to surrender.
What's it like to go from being 12, 13, having that question posed to you, kind of rumbling around in your mind for a few years, and then you have that retreat experience, and then you call the bishop, and the bishop is like, "I know who you are." What kind of what emotion or what is that? Does it bring closure? Does it bring what is that? Could you put your finger on what that felt like for you?
Yeah, it was confirmation for me, but it was also a sense of being known. Being prepared, being cared for, right? And it's like the Lord said, I've been looking after you up to this point. I'm not letting go. I'm not letting go of your hand. Don't let go of my hand, right? So just take it one day at a time and just enjoy the ride, right? And I did, and I still do. Sometimes the ride's a bit rough, but it is. Yeah.
And then you were at seminary for 5 years, and then you were ordained after the 5 years?
Ordained, yeah. May 14th, 1994. And I know there are some people here tonight who are there, so 32 years in May. 32 years, yeah. This coming May 2026, yeah.
So in your priesthood, your time as a priest, what have been some highlights for you? Some memories that really stand out as powerful and prominent memories?
Oh, certainly over the last 32 years, I would say one of the real blessings for me was, preparing my father for his death, like anointing him, hearing his confession, and presiding at his funeral, I'd also say, presiding at my like family weddings, right? Baptisms, baptizing my nephews now who are even taller than me, right, kind of thing, and other, family events along the way. There are so many, but I think what I would highlight would be like a particular 4 years of ministry, not to put things in kind of categories or, numerical, 1 to 2 or 3 or whatever, but to say like one highlight for me was my 4 years at York University in Toronto. Again, Father Roger Vandenacker, our superior at the time, superior now again, but at the time he called me up and said, I want to send you to York University in Toronto. Okay, when do I start? He said, later on that summer. So I'd never been there before. I literally had to have someone drive me there. I would have got lost for sure in that maze of buildings and cement and highways and everything. And I loved my 4 years there. For those of you who've ever been to the chaplaincy at York University, it's very small. It's only 1,000 square feet in the Student Union building, right? But right in the center of everything. Like just the buzz, like outside the door, there everybody's there, right? My first day on campus, I was walking with my, quote unquote driver, and a young student came up to me and she said, "You got this thing on your neck. Like, what are you?" I'm like, "Holy, I'm not in St. Raffles anymore." So I was just like, "What? What are you?" Oh my God. But it was a place that there was a particular anointing on that time, and still is, but anointing on that time, and many couples met there. And I think I'm north of 20 weddings that I've celebrated of students who either met there, or a student who brought the boyfriend or the girlfriend there and they got married later on, so then celebrating those weddings and then baptizing their children, so now I have spiritual children, I have spiritual grandchildren, a family at St. Maurice Parish in Ottawa, where I live here in Ottawa. I baptized their daughter. I gave her first Holy Communion, and last year I was at her confirmation. So I said, okay, now it's either going to be married life or religious life. So book me now. Let's come on. We got to keep the train going here. So, but just to be invited into people's lives, right? Whether it's at a funeral home or a hospital or a school, you're just invited into people's lives because you're a priest. Right? Sometimes you're referred to as the priest, right? The priest is here, but they're here, right? And going back to the pastor I had as a kid growing up at home in St. Raffles, Father Gary Ossiter, he would say, after I was ordained, he said, Allan, most people are not going to remember what you said, but they will remember that you were there. They will remember that you were there. That Father came to the hospital, Father came to the school, Father came to our house, celebrating Mass in people's homes. I enjoy doing that. So it's all these different experiences. Every day is different. And hashtag, I'm not bored. I'm not sitting around wondering, oh, yeah. No, not bored, right? Get up in the morning, get dressed, get ready, and say, Lord, here we go. So it's just a wonderful life. Yeah.
So what have been, talked about some of the good times, what have been some of the harder times as a priest for you?
I would say the hard times, again, not to put things in kind of order of hardness or difficulty, but certainly when you're asked to move to a new parish or a new assignment. I've been moving even out of the province. I was moved to Nova Scotia one time, so having to leave behind families and friends and getting used to new routines, right? Difficult times, journeying with people, through death in the family, even in our community, we are the companions of the cross, right? It's the cross, right? So what does that mean, right? There's challenges, right? Living in community is not easy. I lived by myself as a diocesan priest for 7 years, and I thought I was a saint, right? All by myself, in my 4-bedroom rectory. And I think, and then you join a religious community, and there's others there with you. It's like, I'm not as holy as I thought I was. Right? So that's a challenging thing, right, to admit that, right? And it's just this. There's challenges. Some people are receptive. Some people are not receptive. But it's not really about me convincing them. I can't do that. It's just for me to testify and witness. And how it's received, how it's responded to. That's beyond me, right? And I've had some health issues. I've had some spiritual challenges along the way. But that's how I've grown. That wasn't easy to go through some of these challenging times, but that's how I grow, right? And the Lord reminds me, you have joined the community called the Companions of the Cross. Don't go looking for it. It knows where you live, right? The cross knows where I live, and it's taken different forms and shapes, right? Not necessarily the one that I have wanted to take on, or the cross that I've formed for myself. And it's like, hey, Lord, here's the cross I want to carry, right? No, it's Jesus, what would you have me do? And how can I learn from this, right? And also appreciating that individuals who may be in and of the faith or not, they actually have something to teach me. Like I've met individuals I thought, I don't think this person really, but they become some of my best teachers, right? Human, spiritual, intellectual, emotional. It's all, and I'm still a work in process, right? I'm not done yet, right? I don't want to ever be done, right? Come to that point where I say, well, yeah, like I get 51 in the final exam. I'm pretty good, No. The Lord's like, I still want to do more with you, right? And testify and witness to the fact that He's always been with me, even in the midst of the difficult times. He's always there. He's never let go of my hand.